The International Circus Hall of Fame is located outside Peru, Indiana, amongst corn and bean fields, neighboring the Wabash River. The museum is housed in what remains of the 1922 American Circus Corporation Winter Circus Quarters and contains remnants of many of the multiple circuses that used to winter in the Peru area. Circus wagons, artifacts, costumes, posters, and photos call the remaining buildings home now instead of the circus animals and performers that did long ago. Today, the buildings are part of a National Historic Landmark that pays tribute to the area's rich circus history. I'm meeting up with Bruce Embrey, Senior Ringmaster of the Peru Amateur Circus, to talk about this rich history and how Peru keeps its circus heritage alive. So Bruce, how did Peru become the circus capital of the world?
You know that phrase. I'm happy that you do, and we're very proud of that. It all started in 1884 when a local wagon owner named Ben Wallace, our stable owner I should say, acquired a menagerie for back pay. He put together some other animals and he took it out on the road with this very long name that includes Highway Hidalgo and some other things. It succeeded. They came back to Peru, winter quartered in Peru. The circus got bigger. He was joined by a guy named Hagenbach. They were joined by some other circuses over the years. They built this winter quarter here that we're in right now. Lots and lots of barns, lots of animals were here, and they wintered here. It was all possible because Peru is a railhead. So it was easy to ship the shows out, and it was easy to bring food in. So the fact that it was a major railhead had a lot to do with Peru becoming a major circus location. Circuses began to combine as the travel became easier. And most of them were combined into something called the American Circus Corporation in the late 20s. A man who had roots in Miami County named Ballard acquired that. He then sold the shows to Ringling Brothers in the early 40s. Ringling moved the whole thing to Florida, and the winter quarters sat here vacant for many, many years. A tornado blew down several of the buildings, so what we have left is just a fraction of what was originally here. Along the way, Terrell Jacobs, the lion tamer that owned the barns out on Highway 31 that have recently been acquired by the Department of Transportation, built those barns for his elephants and his cats. That was in, I've read two different dates. I've read 1939, I've read 1940, so who knows. Anyway, he lived on that property and maintained that property for several years, then sold to another circus family named Kelly, Paul Kelly, who had animals, and they had a menagerie there. They continued to do small shows right along 31. Then in 1957 or 58, the local Chamber of Commerce began doing what was called Circus City Festival Days. It was just a parade, and it was a downtown sales event, but it was circus themed, and they would hire professionals to come in and perform on the courthouse lawn. In 1960, they rented a tent, located it at what is now the Thrush tennis courts in the south side of Peru, and trained young people and some adults to do circus acts. And that's when the amateur show was born. Over the years, they did, I think, six or seven years in that tent before we bought the building we're located in now in downtown Peru, put a roof on it, and it's a permanent three-ring circus structure. In the early 70s, circus became so popular with young people that they decided to set an age limit. and that age limit is now 7 to 21. So the adults are out of the show. It's all kids. They do amazing things. There are adult clowns, of course, adult riggers. There's a 65-piece band that includes some really good high school players as well as some professionals. It's a great, great musical show. We call it the best circus band in the land, and it really is. So circus is a big thing in Peru, Indiana. When you get high school kids and grade school kids performing circus acts, your city is really into circus. The message is, if you give kids a chance, they can learn to do anything. Young people in other towns wouldn't know they had the ability to do a double somersault on a flying trapeze, or to be part of a 7-person or 8-person pyramid on a high wire, because they don't have the opportunity to do that. We provide that opportunity. And the fact that young people flock to it and learn to do it tells you the kids will and can do anything.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
It's a great message.
Yes, it is. Now, can you talk a little bit about what would have been here at the Winter Circus Quarters? What would that circus have looked like?
Oh my goodness, these grounds were 5 times this number of buildings. There were performance rings, there were training rings, elephant barns, horse barns, tiger barns. There was a seal pool, as I recall. There were all kinds of things around these grounds. And they were not all one circus. There were several circuses that wintered here. They eventually joined together. But it was the place to be if you were a circus performer in the winter. But it was a very active ground until Ringling bought it and moved it to Florida.
Okay. Now, can you talk a little bit about the amateur circus that they have now? What do the kids go through and what do they learn?
They start training in early March. We have what we call a roundup. We invite everybody in. The trainers explain what the acts are going to be that year and what the skill level is going to be. Kids sign up for acts. We encourage them to sign up for twice as many acts as they're actually going to be able to make, and learn to do them. So after about, I think it's 3 weeks of training, they make a first cut, and then after a few more weeks, they make a second cut. Now we're show size. About 160 children a year between 7 and 21. They do all of the acrobatics that the adults do. We did an 8-person pyramid on the high wire before the professionals did it.
Wow.
And took it to what was then called Premier Romp, which is a youth circus competition in Monte Carlo, and won a gold medal.
So you said the Ringling Brothers bought the circus.
The American Circus Corporation, which was a consolidation of most of the circuses in the country at that point in time.
Okay, and they moved it to Florida?
Moved it to Florida.
Okay. So now you have this lovely museum
Yes.
here.
In the early 80s, a group of us got together and looked at buying the International Circus Hall of Fame, which had been in Orlando but had gone under. A man named John Zweifel owned the name and he owned the artifacts. We worked for 3 or 4 years to try to put together a means of doing this. And finally, and I can't tell you the exact year right now, in the mid-80s, I negotiated the purchase for the Zweifels. We had to borrow some money to do it, and a couple of years later we opened. In the meantime, a man named Lyman Bond, who owned this property, he was in the investment business in Indianapolis, but was originally from Peru, made a deal with the Circus Hall of Fame to use this property. So they have now acquired these barns and are keeping them up and really trying their best to create an incredible circus museum. It really is an incredible circus museum. We did shows out here for several years. Then a really bad windstorm tattered the tent, destroyed it. The Hall of Fame has not been able to replace that. Hopefully they'll get back to doing some shows in the future. But it's a great place to come with a family to look at circus history, and it's getting better and better as the years go on.
What a unique history for Peru.
It really is. I mean, a little town like this, it's hard to imagine. I would like to thank NDOT for the money they gave the Hall of Fame this year, and it was a compensation for the barns that were torn down on 31 because the highway is being expanded, and it's really helped the Hall of Fame restore barns. So barn for barn, I guess that's a pretty good trade-off. At any rate, I think it will allow the Hall of Fame to to do a lot of work at it. And you can see they're expanding the museum exponentially. It's
Yeah.
really a beautiful, beautiful place.
And you got a brand new roof.
Got a brand new roof, so things ought to hold up for quite a while.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You put even more stuff in here.
We can. We hope we will. And as you can see by some of the collections, circus fans collect a lot of stuff.
Yes. And that stuff includes this ornate ringmaster jacket made for Tim Holtz, worn by Bruce, an original costume designed by Edith Head, circus and movie posters featuring Lillian Lysol and The Greatest Show on Earth,
There is a trumpet that Merle, the Ringling band director that wrote a lot of music, played.
a Hagenbeck Wallace circus replica of the late 1940s, a large collection of circus-themed toys. And they have things here like circus carriages.
Oh, wagons and costumes and lots and lots of wagons. They've got a great wagon collection. There's only one other collection in the country that surpasses this, and that's the one in Baraboo, Wisconsin. If you're really into circus, to see things like the shoes that Lillian Lightsell wore when she was a performer back in the 20s is amazing. Most people wouldn't know who Lillian Lightsell is.
Yeah.
Circus fans know. And when they see something like that, they're just amazed that it's here in this museum. So it's a fascinating place with a great background and I think a good future.
And hardworking volunteers.
A lot of hardworking volunteers.
Yes.
Yeah, oh yeah. We run the amateur circus and this program on volunteers.
Wow.
Very important.
Yes, that's incredible.
It really is. Just there are a number of things that just fascinate me as a circus buff. I didn't start out being a circus buff. I got into this because my daughter wanted to be in the amateur circus. But over the years, I've become quite a fan of circus and circus people. They are very unique. They are some of the best athletes I have ever met, and they don't get nearly as much credit for their athleticism as they should. When you can do things that they do on flying trapeze and high wire and the human cannonball shots we talked about, you're an athlete, a good athlete.
Yeah. But you're not only a fan, you're the senior ringmaster of the Peru Amateur Circus.
I have that distinction, and I've loved every minute of it. This is 40 years for me.
Wow. Thank you for talking to me about this today, Bruce. I appreciate it.
I'm happy to do it. If it has anything to do with the circus, I'll talk to you anytime. You know that.
Thank you.